Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan and today I'm going to show you how to replace the front brake pads and rotors for a 2009 BMW 3 Series. So I'm just going to show you the front brakes today, not the rear. The front's usually the ones that go out more often. They're the ones that basically do the bulk of the work, and I'm going to show you how to do one side because they're exactly the same, just mirrored, and I think it would make the video too redundant if I showed both sides. So with all that out of the way, let's jump in. So before we lift the vehicle in the air, we're going to go ahead and grab a 17mm socket and a large breaker bar, and we're going to break the lug bolts loose. That way the weight of the car holds the wheel for us. And when you're breaking something loose, always go down with gravity. It makes it a lot easier. And a link to a decent breaker bar is in the description in case you don't have one, as you're probably going to need it. There we go. And now we can lift the vehicle into the air. So now what I'm going to do is remove all the lug bolts except for the top one, and I'll show you why in a minute. Typically, every BMW, almost every German car, they don't have lug nut studs, so they have bolts. As a result, when you remove the last bolt, the whole wheel wants to come off. So be careful about that if it's your first time removing a wheel like this. Sometimes it will stay on the register, like this one has, but you can't always count on that, so be prepared. This wheel might actually be a little stuck. Yeah, it is. So if your wheel is stuck very gently, just walk it back and forth like this, and be careful, because again, it can fall right off. There's no studs or anything holding on. The only thing holding it on is this little register, and it can just slide right off of that. And now our brake caliper is exposed, so what we can do next is grab the whole assembly and turn it so it's a little easier for us to work on. So on the back side of our caliper, there's dust caps right here and right here, so we need to remove those. Sometimes they're a little tricky. There we go. And there's two. So now we can take a size 7 Allen and remove the caliper slide bolts here. They're not on super terribly tight. There we go. Set that aside. And we can do the other one, y'all. There we go, get that slide bolt out of there. So on the outside of the brake caliper assembly, there's this little, I guess you'd call it a clip. We're just gonna remove that. And what this will do is alleviate pressure on the caliper so we can get it off. So now I should be able to kind of walk the caliper back. Might struggle a little bit, that's okay. Then we can set that up. Well, you know what? And we can remove our brake pads. These actually look brand new, but hey, customer wanted them changed, so we're changing them. Apparently the braking procedure didn't go super great, so they don't feel awesome on the road. Just pull that out of the caliper housing. Now, here's the wear indicator. So it's important to transfer this to the new one. It just pulls apart like that. But hold on to one of these used pads. We're going to use it for a special tool later. And then we can just store our caliper up and away so it doesn't get in our way while we work. And make sure you don't hang it by the brake line. Make sure it's kind of just sitting up and out of our way. We can even zip tie it to the coil spring. It's not a bad call. So I've actually zip tied our caliper to the coil spring. That way it can't get in my way, it can't fall, can't harm the brake line. So now what we can do on the back side is remove our caliper mounting bracket, make sure our wear indicator's out of the way, and grab an 18mm socket on a long breaker bar or something similar, because these are usually on pretty darn good. And these were no exception. Once you break them loose though, they're pretty good. They're pretty easy. Now when I'm removing the bolts, I'm holding the caliper bracket and I'm holding the rotor as well, because once I remove this, technically there's nothing holding the rotor to the hub here. We can remove those, including their washers, and then remove our bracket. Set that aside. Keep an eye on the rotor. They love to smash toes, and sometimes they're stuck, or sometimes they just come right off. Actually, I was incorrect. There is a number 6 Allen holding the rotor to the flange, so that's kind of cool. Wish I saw that earlier, but that's okay. Most of the time people don't put these back, that's why I never really expect them. Usually they're just there for when the car is being assembled, but you can put them back. It makes future brake jobs a little easier, or harder, because that can get seized in the hub, and then you're really in trouble. Here we go. We can remove our rotor. Now, if the rotor is stuck to the flange, maybe you live somewhere where it snows and corrosion's gotten in here, spray inside of here. So let's pretend it's stuck on there, right? Spray inside of here on the register with some WD-40 or penetrating lube or something like that. And then strike this surface with a good sized hammer. Don't hit this surface on the rotor because it can actually shatter and damage you. So hit this surface a couple of times and then wiggle it left and right and it should come off for you. The next thing we can do is grab some brake clean or carburetor spray. We're just going to clean this flange off because we don't want it getting stuck in the future, and it's just better if this is a bit cleaner. And you can really go to town on this and get it as clean as you want, but I think that's pretty good. It's a lot better. So now I can replace my rotor. I have a brand new one, and the link is down below in the description. Now when you get these out of the bag, or the box, they're going to have a little bit of manufacturer's oil on there, so go ahead and clean this really thoroughly with brake cleaner carb spray, because you don't want oil getting on there and completely ruining your day. So then we can replace the bolt that holds it to the flange here. There we go, looks pretty good. So when we're torquing this down, it's actually 16 Newton meters. Honestly, one arm tight's probably sufficient for that one. Don't over tighten it. So what I've done is zip tied the caliper in such a way that you can see it. This is just purely for instructional purposes. If I wasn't doing a video on this, I probably wouldn't do it this way. I would just kind of hold it as I'm working, but I need to show the camera, so that's why that is. And what we can do is grab our old brake pad that had the clips on the back of it and set that into the piston there. And what that's going to do is protect that piston as we squeeze this brake caliper piston back into the housing. And what I like to use is a large pair of channel locks. However, you can use a C-clamp. There's even special tools that are just for this application, but I've always found that a large pair of channel locks works pretty well. So we can just start squeezing. So I showed the channel locks method. Now I'm going to show the C-clamp method. Just want to cover both my bases for you here. Just open our C-clamp up a little bit. Put it on the pad. Make sure it is on that pad. And make sure it's not going to slip. And we can just rotate that in. So I've been twisting that for a little while there, and I think it's at the end of the travel. I think this is what it's more or less going to look like. Because the pads we're taking off are so new, you're really not going to see, you know, this cylinder extended out super far. So I think that is at the end of its travel. I can't turn this anymore. It is really, really tough. And I've compared our old brake pad thickness to our new one, and it is basically the same. So I only probably had a couple of millimeters there to retract. Yours will look different. This will be out more when you begin. So you're going to see that come down. Just make sure you do things nice and evenly and slowly. And remember, we're not opening the system, so there's no need to bleed the brakes. So we can just remove our retraction apparatus here. There we go. And plonk out our old pads. Throw them into the trash. So yeah, it looks pretty retracted. Yeah, that's going to be good for us. So we can replace our caliper mounting bracket and those two large bolts. So again, grab your 18mm, and we're just gonna snug those up by hand first. So, all right, and the torque spec for these guys is 110 Newton meters. And if you don't have a torque wrench, that's okay. Just two-arm tight with a long breaker implement. Notice my torque wrench didn't go off yet. I'm actually gonna tighten these as evenly as I can. You always want to do that. It's a good practice to be in. There we go, 110. And there we go, 110. Great. So now we can take our new brake pad and put it in, making sure the clips look like this, are facing our piston. And remember, it's upside down, so have the round part facing up. There we go. It should snap in just like this. And if it doesn't snap in like that, go ahead and double check you don't have the wrong pads. It's like really well known that most places will give you an incorrect pad, I'm going to do my absolute best to put the correct ones in the description for you so you can just order them. And then we can just set our new pad for the outside in like this. And then we're going to worry about that clip after we have it all mounted. Just hold on to this guy as we're maneuvering the caliper back into position. So then we can grab our caliper, make sure our brake line isn't twisted in a funny way. Make sure it feels nice and natural. You might have rotated it over once while you were working. And then we can just fit our caliper back onto its home, making sure their pads are in the little notches right here on all four sides. And then we can replace our slide bolts. So now we can reinstall our slide bolts. I've already cleaned and lightly lubricated them. And I have to say, on the BMW installer's website, it actually says not even to lubricate them. I think they should be lightly lubricated, but definitely give them a good cleaning. And emphasis on very lightly lubricated. And then we can just... And if it's not going, you know, jiggle the caliper around a little bit. See if you can catch some threads. And the torque spec for these is 30 Newton meters, and it's 23 foot-pounds for American. But if you don't have a torque wrench, just one arm tight's fine. These don't need to be, you know, Hulk tight here. There we go. And then we can grab our dust caps and replace those as well. They just push on. There we go. So now we can replace our wear indicator sensor. That's this guy here, and it just slots into that little groove right there. There's no like bolt or anything. And you just push it into place just like that. Make sure the wire for that is secure here on this little bleeder cap. Yeah, like that. Very good. So if your new brake pads comes with a new one of these clips, go ahead and install that one. Mine didn't, so I'm just going to reuse this guy here. So remember, it went in like this, and then this arm came over here. And it might be a little bit of a struggle, but it's not too bad. Just make sure that these ones stay in their homes. And be careful, this is spring-loaded. You could pinch your finger pretty good. So keep your fingers out of the way of anything that like moves. There we go. Make sure that is all seated in its home like this. Yeah, all right. Cool. That looks great. So with the brake job done, we can replace our wheel. Put it on that center register. There we go. See how it wants to fall off on me? And now I have to line up the bolt holes, which is super fun. Bad. And then hope that it's lined up enough to where these threads can grab. Should be. Just look through the holes on the rim. Putting on German wheels, always exciting. Again, these are a 17 millimeter. And even when I'm just tightening them down loosely, I always go to star pattern. Always do a star pattern when you are dealing with wheels. And don't worry about getting the lug bolts down to their final torque spec. We're going to do that on the ground. So with the car on the ground and the full weight of the vehicle on there, it's in park, the parking brake has been set, we can torque our wheel bolts here, and the torque spec is 120 Newton meters according to BMW, and we're going to do that in a star pattern. And there we go, brake job complete. So now that our brake job is all complete, we need to take up the air that is between the brake pads and the rotor. And the way we do that is we just very slowly push down on the brake pedal until it is at the very end of its travel. What that's doing is getting rid of that air gap. And when I say air gap, I don't mean gap between or inside of the system, like where the brake fluid is. I mean between the pad and the rotor. And then we're just going to let that come up very slowly. We're just going to do that a few times, probably like 3 to 6 times. As soon as you get a very firm pedal, you can stop. See, I didn't have that much gap, so mine's already starting to feel very firm and good. Oh yeah. So once it's nice and firm like that, we know that the slack essentially has been taken out and we can go drive the thing. Now before you go driving anywhere, this is really important. You need to brake in the brakes because you have two brand new machine surfaces, and if you just go out there and wail on the brakes real hard, they'll actually like glaze over it and not work well or almost at all. It's really important to brake in your brakes, so I'm going to tell you how to do that. Is you want to go around your neighborhood to about 10 miles an hour and touch on the brake pedal until the pad and rotor meets, and then let off, and do that like 6 times. You know, speed up to 10 miles an hour, have the rotor and pad basically touch, let off, touch, let off, and that dust is going to kind of, you know, not be embedded inside the pad, and then the brake will eventually be able to be broken in if you do that like 5 or 6 times, and then the pedal will feel really good and your brakes will be broken in. So that's how to replace your brakes on a 2009 BMW 3 Series. This is a really easy repair. Do not take it to the dealer. This is something anybody can do, and you're going to save hundreds of dollars doing it yourself. Thank you so much for watching. If this video has helped you at all, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the channel out, or even subscribing, going that extra mile. I'd appreciate that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.